Okay, guys, cool. Hey, you guys.
Yes, back up.
Okay, so we're continuing here with more updates on the Trump assassination attempt at the White House Correspondents Dinner tonight. And a couple things we have to share. First and foremost, President Trump, at the behest of law enforcement, has officially decided not to return to the speech or continue the events. We said in the last video that is indeed the right call because he already proved his courage the first time this happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. There's no need, frankly, to take the risk in order to entertain a bunch of scumbag journalists anyway, so very glad that President Trump will not be continuing the White House Correspondents' Dinner. But nonetheless, as we're learning details, and by the way, we do have the confirmation of the shooter's identity, and it's about exactly the type of person you would expect to have done this, let me just put it that way, that leftists are already rushing to, first of all, call the whole thing fake, much like the Trump assassination attempt in Butler. They're claiming the whole thing was a false flag. It was staged. Sure, a law enforcement officer really did get shot, and there's an actual person who's currently in custody and going to spend at the very least their entire life in prison, but, you know, he just agreed to do that for some odd reason. You know, clearly it must have been a false flag. This is a distraction from Epstein or some stupid garbage. And by the way, a bunch of the Candace Owens, Thomas Massey fans on the right wing joining in on this whole thing. Oh, it was staged, just like Butler, Pennsylvania was staged, which they're once again trying to rehash tonight, because I'm sure that, you know, Corey Comparator, hero, arch patriot, by the way, on that day, he just bled to death in front of his own wife and daughters while protecting them because the whole thing was totally fake. According to these brain dead retards, you know, I guess Corey wasn't even a real person or something. You know, the whole thing was, by the way, they staged it using live ammunition because that's completely smart. There's definitely not a risk in doing that. You know, just complete idiocy and stupidity. But I want to bring you this at the same time, of course, quite ironically, while these characters, the leftists and the quasi-leftists, are claiming that the whole thing was fake, we simultaneously have leftists outside cheering on the assassination attempt. And, you know, it's not exactly a secret that this political coalition does indeed support political violence. I would go so far as to say at this point, it's basically the median opinion of the average Democrat voter. Don't believe me, go ask them about it. Yet, quite oddly, while they're literally standing outside, I'm not making this up, while they're standing outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner in D.C., holding signs celebrating the assassination attempt, they're likewise claiming that the assassination attempt was fake. And they do this every single time. We support political violence, but when it happens at our own hands, coming from our own side, it didn't really happen. I mean, pick us, what are you even talking about? But we have that. They're melting down over Trump's ballroom again. They're now once again trying to attack Erica Kirk because apparently she was seen on camera crying and being traumatized, because how dare Erica Kirk, of all people, be slightly upset at the fact that she's witnessing basically a very similar thing happen once again. These people are slow down scum. What else can I say? But we'll address that and we'll show you what's going on here in today's video, guys. So that said, do us a favor. If you do enjoy our content, make sure you hit the like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And don't believe me, go on social media right now. It's all over. Any place that liberals are coalescing, you hear stuff like this. Another fake assassination attempt at the Correspondents' Dinner. Stop staging fake assassination attempts. Now, bear in mind, I'm not sure what about it is actually supposed to be fake, or they don't even really have an argument on this. As a matter of fact, from the very moment it happened, they just proceeded to say, oh, it's fake. Oh, why? Because leftists never commit violence? That might be an argument. Oh, we're just a bunch of flower-loving hippies. If not for the fact that every single time leftists do commit violence, your side goes out and publicly celebrates it. Okay, we remember the Charlie Kirk thing. We remember how widespread that is on social media to this very day. You don't exactly need to sit there and insult our intelligence, and quite ridiculously, right? So again, the idea, what is the argument here? Because you guys don't have a forensic argument. You don't even have an argument at all, considering you were saying, you know, only been a couple hours. You don't have any evidence to suggest that the whole thing was a false flag. We saw the footage. We have pictures of the guy. We have witnesses who were there firsthand, including many liberal members of the media. But, you know, once again, okay, so this is the scene. I kid you not, right outside of the event, We have leftists who showed up knowing that an assassination attempt did happen, knowing that shots were fired, and they held up signs here, I kid you not, standing in solidarity with the assassin, saying, and I quote, I mean, you see these signs. One of them reads, "Death to tyrants." Another one reads, "Death to all of them." So this is what they're doing, saying we support the assassination of President Trump. But when it happens and it appears that a leftist did indeed do it, it's just totally inconceivable. A crazy leftist might have tried to storm into the hotel and assassinate the president, just a completely ridiculous behavior. I think this statement puts it quite well from Bear Maxer. Leftists all want Trump dead, yet they dismiss every assassination attempt as staged. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't even really make any logical sense. And of course, in complete stupidity behavior, we saw as the presidential limousine speeds away here in Washington, D.C., that a crazed leftist likewise tried to run at the limousine. I mean, I kid you not. So, whether or not this was a single crazed lunatic or some type of organized attempt, I think it's fair to say, in a sense, he's not acting alone, because he did indeed act on behalf of, we'll just say at the very least, a sizable chunk of the No Kings Democrat voter base, as you see in the protests outside, and as you see in this video right here. Look at this idiot.
Stay behind the perimeter. Do not cross the gate.
I don't care.
Oh, I'm locked up. I'm locked up. Okay, guys. Cool. Hey, you guys.
Yes. Back up.
Can you grab my
You're not listening.
So certainly glad to see that she got arrested. This makes at least 2 crazed leftist lunatics who are behind bars tonight, although given that it's Washington, D.C., I'm not exactly all that optimistic that she won't be just simply let out of jail, likely a very small bail amount being paid by whatever leftist organization is propping her up, let me put it that way. But who knows, with the federalization of D.C. and the intensity of this moment, maybe we'll be wrong about that. Maybe she will face a little bit stronger consequences. Because seriously, you watch a video like this, and what on earth are you thinking, right? Like, this is a law enforcement scene. It's a presidential barricade. Shots just went off in front of the president. And your idea is to try to break through a police line and, I don't know, chase after the presidential limo just to get a video. Oh, no, Kings, you're so bad. And then the moment you get arrested for very logical reasons, what are you thinking? Especially, it's a stupid thing to do in general, but especially after a presidential assassination attempt, you're going to dart toward the presidential limo. But what? Literally, what are you guys doing? You're arresting me? Can someone grab my phone? Just, completely just not taking the situation seriously at all. But again, you watch this, you watch the signs that like average Democrat voters are holding outside of the events, but somehow, with no evidence, we're just supposed to believe that the whole thing was staged, It was clearly, what logical person would think that when the political left overwhelmingly calls for political violence and assassination against President Trump, that some leftists might not act on that, right? What a crazy, or might act on that. What a crazy thing to even have as a concept. How could you not see that the whole thing was obviously staged? Well, that said, we do have the ID of the suspect. Now, I'm not sure what leftists have to say about this guy. Is he a Republican op? Is he just the fall guy that's agreeing to go to jail for the rest of his life? Like, we're not exactly sure. But President Trump did share this image of the man being detained after shots were fired at the White House Correspondents Dinner. So that is an update we do have as of this video. We can confirm whether he was dead or detained. We now know he was detained, and you see him here on the floor in a quite pathetic position. I hope that a lot of the leftist scum out there who likewise might think about trying to assassinate our president take notes that, obviously that's not going to end very well for you. And as of now, we do know this guy was from California, and we have his name and believed political affiliation. So,
and has been captured. They go into his apartment. I guess he lives in California, and he's a sick person, a very sick person. And we don't want things like this to happen.
Yeah, so at the moment, the federal government has confirmed that the guy was from California. It appears that he booked a room in this very hotel so he could plan something like this. And according to Fox, citing law enforcement sources, the guy's full ID appears to be a man by the name of Cole Thomas Allen. He has been identified as the shooter at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and matching some of the hints that Trump dropped in the press conference today, because he made it sound like, yeah, we don't think this is an Iranian or a jihadi plot, which suggests it's probably the other thing, right? He is a 31-year-old school teacher. Oh, wow, an educator. Who could have guessed? From Torrance, California. He is a registered Democrat who donated to Kamala Harris back in 2024. So, this is something we look at and say is not exactly all that surprising. I'm sure the leftists are going to say, wait, but he was a teacher. How could someone who's working with children possibly do something that crazed? It's not surprising at all. Actually, as a matter of fact, obviously education is a virtuous and necessary profession, but the reality is, as conservatives so often talk about, it's not really much of a conspiracy theory. There are genuinely a lot of mentally ill and coincidentally far left, but I wonder if there's a correlation there, mentally ill, far left politically psychopaths who are indeed working with children, and the whole premise of it is extremely terrifying and scary, but, this is far from alone. And just understand, by the way, that when Democrats and Tim Walz and characters like that go on to praise the teachers and talk about the educators, oh, our public school teachers, they're just so fantastic. Just keep in mind, they're talking exactly about freaks like this right here, right? These are the type of people that, according to Democrats who really are just ballot harvesting from the teachers unions, this is who they're really gaining their support from. Apparently, this guy won Teacher of the Year in December of 2024. So, according to left-wing school boards and school districts, he is a model educator. And why did he go to assassinate Trump after just being one of these supposedly wholesome hippie leftists? Well, who is surprised? Because again, this is pretty typical behavior from the political left. But again, that is what we can say thus far. I repeat, I'm not sure what leftists have to say about this. I guess this public school, or we don't know public yet, but school teacher or educator guy from California, this liberal just decided to be part of the grand Trump conspiracy. He's going to be the fall guy. He's going to spend his whole life in jail to help Trump build the ballroom or something like that. This theory is just completely ridiculous. I'm not sure, but please explain to me that, right? To the people calling it fake. Okay, so who is this guy? Is he a CIA plant? Does he not exist? Why is it that it was pretty easy, allegedly, to find his social media history, which seems to show, he was a real person, right? I don't know. But, nonetheless, it doesn't stop there. A lot of leftists are likewise now melting down because Trump made a brief statement about the presidential ballroom while addressing this entire incident. Although, when you take a listen to the details, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I would argue Trump's argument on the ballroom here is completely valid, but nonetheless, hear it out for yourself.
All of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, it's not a particularly secure building, and I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before.
Right. So this is another subject of left-wing freakout. As a matter of fact, I've even heard some people argue that it was a false flag in order to justify the ballroom, which is a pretty crazy conspiracy to say the least, right? So first of all the things that you might stage a false flag to achieve, right? Maybe try to say that it was an Iranian to justify the war or something big picture, big scale. No. Trump staged an assassination attempt against himself simply because he wanted to build the ballroom, right? It's that important to him. I'm just going to say logically that sounds like a little bit of a stretch. I know, crazy idea. I just so out there to say that it doesn't really add up. By the way, wouldn't you? Okay, keep in mind too, these people also say that Butler was a false flag. And in Butler, let's not forget, President Trump got hit in the ear. They claimed it was ketchup or fake blood or something. But, that happened. A real guy, again, hero, arch patriot, rest in peace, Corey, died that day. But in this case, you would think now that Trump is the president, he has the CIA, he has the FBI, that you might stage an assassination attempt that at least is on the equal level of Butler, Pennsylvania, if not better quality, quote unquote, supposing that it's a false flag, right? You wouldn't just have a guy run through the hotel lobby, not manage to kill anyone, not even make it through the front door or entrance. I'm just saying, you would think if it was a false flag and if you were staging a false flag, you'd make it seem more severe than that because you want the shock value. But, why are we even entertaining the argument? These people are brain dead. They don't even deserve to have their opinions treated as remotely valid or, that's the difference of opinions. This is the free marketplace of ideas. Now, you guys don't have opinions. You are brain dead. If you believe this type of stuff, you should be institutionalized, frankly, and I don't know what else to say to you at that point. But, let me also say that, like it or not, libtards, Trump's argument here about the ballroom is actually completely correct. I know, I understand it's become a meme at this point. People like to laugh at it. But actually, why is it that you would hold a huge correspondents dinner, right? Basically one of these big galas where a bunch of important people are, politicians are there, the president's there, he's going to be speaking at, in this case, a Hilton hotel that has a bunch of open entrances. There's a bunch of general people from the public staying there, and you have this huge national security issue. And it's basically right there in the open in front of everybody that effectively anybody can access. I mean, obviously, that actually is a security concern, right? The whole argument around the ballroom, by the way, has been part of it, right? There's going to be military stuff going on there. It's going to be drone proof, et cetera, et cetera. But even practically, if you're going to be holding a big state dinner like that, you want it to be in a place, as you can see, that's closed off. Because if it's not closed off, if there's open doors, it's a hotel, it's a public space that anyone can run inside and try to, do an assassination attempt, then obviously that's a security concern and a problem. So as much as people like to make jokes about it, I actually think that Trump here noting that this is why we want the ballroom is an incredibly effective argument for the ballroom that, let's not forget, is not being funded by the taxpayer. I'm just saying, like, logistically, it does make sense. It is a sound argument. But I guess, as usual, the leftists basically are mad about anything that would make it harder for them to assassinate Trump. And so, that's really the reason why they're mad about the ballroom. Maybe that's why they were mad from the beginning. I don't know. But especially they're mad about this recent comment that Trump made for about 30 seconds as it pertains to the ballroom. Of course, it doesn't stop there. Likewise, some cell phone video did show that Erica Kirk, who was there tonight, was apparently crying while she was leaving the scene. I believe she can be heard on camera basically saying, "I want to go home." And this is likewise something a bunch of leftists piled on. They are laughing at her. They're calling her an actress or something, or saying that she's such a bad actor. She's just staging it. It's all fake. It's all theatrical. Now, again, I maybe I'm the crazy one here, but to me, it actually makes perfect sense why Erica Kirk might be traumatized. Let's not forget, this is the woman who watched her own husband get brutally assassinated right in front of her by one of your people, right? By one of a crazed, deranged, violent leftist. So yeah, the fact that gunshots went off, the fact that, a similar incident happened or almost happened in front of her. Yeah, leftists, I understand, like, you guys maybe don't have humanity inside or normal emotions, and there's a lot screwed up in the brain inside there. But, if you were really to have empathy and understand maybe how other people actually felt, I don't know. To me, it actually just makes perfect sense why someone in that position, especially a woman, by the way, might get traumatized or start crying or get scared, right? Because not only is it a scary situation genuinely to begin with, she just watched that happen to someone very close to her. I mean, again, I know maybe that's a crazy opinion, right? But what else can we say? These people are absolute scum. They're the same people who started the whole thing where if Erica Kirk is crying, they say she's acting. If she's not crying, if she's smiling, they say, "Why aren't you crying?" You know, I don't know if she walked out here completely normal, they would have said it was fake because she was crying and traumatized. They're also going to say it was fake. You know, she can never win in the eyes of anyone. And I'm sure when Candace returns from her exile, she's going to be piling on the same exact thing. Wow. Why would Erica Kirk get scared, traumatized, or start crying after having witnessed another assassination attempt? Whoa, it's a big mystery. Yeah, let's send Sherlock Holmes and Scooby-Doo to get to the bottom of this one. I can't believe it. That's so unbelievably implausible. Brain dead people and also just scumbag people. You put the two together, you get these characters. What else can we say? But, you know, all of that said, I would like to play a short snippet of what Trump did say in his press conference tonight, because I think it summarizes what, first of all, is true, but also a lot of people need to hear as to the question of why do people keep trying to assassinate Trump in particular. I'm just saying.
Why do you think this keeps happening to you?
Well, you know, I've studied assassinations, and I must tell you, the most impactful people, the people that do the most, you take a look at the people, Abraham Lincoln, I mean, you go through the people that have gone through this where they got them. But the people that do the most, the people that make the biggest impact, they're the ones that they go after. They don't go after the ones that don't do much because they like it that way. And when you look at the people that have either, whether it was an attempt or a successful attempt, they're very impactful people. Just take a look at the names here, the big names. And I hate to say I'm honored by that, but I've done a lot. We've done a lot. We have.
Yep, and that's exactly it. To answer the question, why do the bad guys keep trying to come after Trump? It's very simple. Because he is doing things that threaten the bad guys. And I understand that even in right-wing media nowadays, that's apparently a controversial take. You know, so many want to say Trump has betrayed us. He's sold out. He's the establishment. Oh, yeah. Is that why the bad guys now 4 different times have tried to assassinate him? And, you know, once, you know, you could argue that, well, maybe it was just a crazy person who wanted to assassinate a president and there's not a bunch of politics to it. But I'm sorry, it's now a very disproportionate level of, you know, this happening towards Trump, this happening towards Trump's top supporters, people like Charlie Kirk, by the way. Why do they want to come after him? Likewise, because actually he was effective, and the way he was approaching politics, which, let's not forget, at the time was criticized by a lot of the right-wing conspiracy theorists, Israel-obsessed crowd, et cetera, who's, you know, saying a lot of the same stuff nowadays that the leftists are. Very interesting about that, right? But no, it turns out actually it was effective, and that's the very reason why the left saw it as a threat, you know? You have facets of right-wing media now that say, oh, well, Trump isn't even deporting anybody, and then you have the actual left, like the actual bad guys in the streets, not just protesting, but rioting and committing domestic terrorism to resist the deportations that are supposedly not even happening. There seems to be a disconnect here. There seems to be an internal, almost controlled opposition, a psyop coming within the right to try to turn the good guys against their leader, who is, you know, this guy right here. I'm just going to throw that out there. But, you know, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was all just fake, right, guys? It's all just fake. This Kamala Harris supporter agreed to be the fall guy for the CIA so that way Trump could build the ballroom, guys. Corey Comparator, he just bled out in front of his family because it was all, arch patriot hero, by the way, because it was all fake, you know? These people don't seem to be the brightest, but that's just me. Anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you were new, and until next time, God bless and peace.